All right, everyone. Well, welcome to today's SOAR Disability Ministry Network. Glad to have all of you. Today is October the 27th. As I was sharing just a little bit ago, starting to feel a lot like fall. It is fall, so that's good. Glad to have everyone here. But let me just kind of kick us off by opening us up in prayer, and then we'll go around and get some introductions and see what's going on with everybody. But let me pray. Our gracious Heavenly Father, God, we just thank you so much for this day. God, I thank you for all the churches and ministries represented here, Lord. Just pray that you give us wisdom and discernment and just welcoming individuals with disabilities into our ministries. And God, I just pray that you help us be effective in that. Just bless this time together now. Help us be able to help one another. And God, just thank you for everyone that's here and just anyone who might be watching this video at a future date. Pray that you bless them as well. And God, we just give you all praise and glory to your name now. Pray this in your holy name. Amen. All right, guys. Well, thanks for joining. Some of you have been with us for a long time, and some of you are brand new. Some of you I just met at the KidMin conference, and several of you I just did some consults with. So excited to have you all here. But to kick off, I thought we would just go around and we'll have you introduce yourself, kind of share what your role is. Why don't you share a little bit about your church ministry, whether you're just starting, if you're already got things going, and then just share if there's any and we'll come back to it. If you want to share it later, that's fine. But if there's a topic or something that you want to make sure we cover today, share that and we can start thinking through that. So Quincy, since you're one of our golden oldies with us, and I'll just kind of give everyone background. Quincy wasn't there, but Quincy's church and their ministry was one of the first churches I helped launch with disability ministry. Gosh, I think 10 years ago now. So Quincy's now been there. How long have you been there, Quincy?
About 2 years, 2.5.
2 years now. Okay. So with that, Quincy, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us about you.
Sure. My name's Quincy. I'm the special needs coordinator at a church in Lee Summit, Missouri. And that's kind of in the Kansas City metro area on the Missouri side. And I'm really proud of a lot of the programming we have. We have a children's class, a teens class, and an adults class that meet on Sunday mornings. And then we also have Wednesday night programming for students with disabilities in the youth ministry. We have different serving roles that our adults have elected into to serve within our church. We have a couple of respites every year. We partnered with SOAR last year for a summer camp offering. We have a parent support group that meets once a month during the service, during a Sunday service. So there's childcare provided for that. And we have adult socials that we do every month to every other month. Those are kind of just as volunteers have time and availability to put those on. So that's kind of some of the things that we're doing. However, I think this today, I came just really burdened about inclusion. I feel like we have great programming that's separate, but I would love to see more inclusion church-wide and awareness of our ministry. Sometimes our ministry gets overlooked or it feels like it's off to the side. And I don't love standing in front of the church body and speaking. That is not my calling or my passion. And so I'm just wrestling with that personally. Is God calling me to step outside of my comfort zone and do this? Or is God putting people in my path that can be advocates and speak on this on my behalf, and I can continue working behind the scenes where I feel comfortable?
Cool. Well, we'll definitely be coming back to that, Quincy. Glad to have you here today. Georgia, as I get you right as you're drinking, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to everyone?
Sorry. Hi, I'm Georgia. That is how it's pronounced. I know it's spelled weird. And I'm at the same church as Tammy, called Living Branch Church. We're in Tucson, Arizona. We're relatively new. We're still a portable church we're setting up in a high school right now. And our main disabilities ministry is in the kids area. So Tammy's the kids coordinator, and I'm what we call the buddy coach. So I work as a buddy on Sunday mornings, but I also run between Tammy and all of our buddies and kind of organize the buddies as like a group.
Cool. I'm glad to have you. Tammy, let's go to you.
Yeah, so I'm Tammy, the director for our kids program. And like Georgia said, she's our buddy coach. So like she said, we're relatively new. We've been doing this a year and a half. We launched a buddy program shortly after we launched our kids ministry, but we're really looking to take it to the next level. So grateful to have Georgia as a coach and just, yeah, ready to go to the next level with it.
Cool. Awesome. All right. Clancy, welcome. Tell us about yourself.
Hi, I am Clancy, and I am, sorry, getting my computer.
All good.
I work at Timothy Lutheran Church in Blue Springs, close to Lee Summit, in Missouri, and I am the children's and middle school ministry coordinator. I got hired in March, I believe, so I'm new to the church, but I work with one of our newest youth pastors. And my job previously, years ago, I worked with disabled adults. And after that, I had my daughter and I ended up staying at home with her. So when I joined our church and got hired on, the pastor and I were talking about where we wanted to see our youth program go and how we can assist it in growing. And one of the things that he mentioned was wanting to somehow start a like a disabled kids ministry. So I have worked with disabled adults. He obviously is a pastor, so he's done the youth stuff. So now we're brand new and just need to figure out how to get this rolling. So that's kind of where
Awesome.
I'm at ground zero. So
That's perfect. Glad to have you, and we're all happy to help you out. All right. Well, welcome.
thanks.
Kaylee. Good to see you, Kaylee. Tell us about you.
Hey, I am the kids director at Midway Church in Pilot Point, Texas. We don't have a special needs ministry yet, but working on creating one. And I've been here for about a year now, so just the need has increased a lot. And I guess for today, I am interested in special needs, also ESL, because last night we had a child with nonverbal autism, but also only spoke Spanish. So I'm pulling out all the Spanish that I know and also all of the special needs knowledge that I know and putting it together. So that was a very interesting experience. But I guess that's my most immediate need for today.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Well, we'll just kind of go through some of these, and this is an open forum, so everybody please jump in and talk. And as we're going, it's absolutely fine to go down some rabbit trails. If there's other things that come up, we can be talking with that. But we've got a couple hours here, so we got plenty of time to talk through everything. And what I absolutely love here, we've got ministries just trying to start, ministries who I have been going a little bit, trying to really shore it up and get to the next level, and ministries who have been here for a while and have good, strong program. But one thing you'll always see, no matter how long you've been in ministry, no matter how many people you have, there are always going to be things you're trying to get going and figure out here. So let's focus on Quincy's one here real quick. And she just shared she has to leave here in a little bit too. So don't apologize. You're a good girl. But I was going to hit yours here first anyways. So and talk about inclusion. How can we do inclusion to bring into the whole church? And I love that whole topic. That's it. It's hard at first to just get the disability ministry or special needs ministry going. But one thing that I always share, and I've talked with any of you one-on-one, I'll always say that, a special needs ministry is unlike any other ministry because it goes to the entire family. It's not just the individual with special needs. It's the siblings, it's the parents, but we also have to extend it to the rest of the church and really try to change the whole church and do things there. So some churches have been very good at promoting inclusion everywhere. Some churches have a very hard time with it. What thoughts or what have you guys seen? Where are you guys at with that? I'll let you all jump in before I start doing all the talking.
I feel like we're more of inclusion because we don't have a program, and so that's kind of our only model, a little bit by necessity, and maybe that's a little bit opposite. I'm kind of wanting what you have and you're wanting the inclusion, and I feel like our church body has loves our people that are at our church that have special needs, and I think maybe ones that are have a little bit more high functioning and can be able to, I don't know. I think that's an easier type of person to include than maybe someone that has greater needs than that. And so I don't know what that looks like. I haven't experienced that, and maybe that's what you're experiencing.
Yeah. One thing. I was just going to say one thing, and welcome, Adam. Good to have you. One thing I would just share real quick to give you a little bit more background, because Quincy's church is different than some of your others. She's at a very large church. What would you say, Quincy? I don't even know the latest numbers. Would you say about 5,000-6,000? If not bigger?
Yeah, at the Lee Summit campus, that's probably, yeah. And we have a couple of other campuses. That's also what I was going to say, is at the smaller campuses, inclusion has gone much more smoothly. It just is. We have a great adults program at one of our smaller campuses, and they just attend service and are fully accepted. And yeah, so.
And that has been my experience. It's a lot easier at smaller churches to have the whole inclusion piece come about throughout the entire church. When you're at larger campuses, it's a lot harder to have it work because it's harder to see, and there's just, for lack of a better word, a lot of red tape you have to cut through a lot of times with staff to do things. Real quick, I just want to say, hey, Adam, welcome. We'll get right back to this, but Adam, why don't you just real quick introduce yourself, let everyone say hi to you and see where you're from.
Hello. So I'm from Ballin, Missouri, and I have a church group called Good Shepherd Fellowship Forever Abilities Matter. It is ran out of Good Shepherd Lutheran Church in Manchester, Missouri. And I have, we started this group back in February of 2019. And we also have a puppet ministry within the group. And you can check us out on Facebook and YouTube.
And I'm telling you, guys have to get their YouTube page. Their puppet ministry is phenomenal. Their adults with disabilities do the entire puppet thing, and it is out of this world. I could spend all day watching it. So that highly recommend it. Adam, why don't you tell everyone the YouTube page title again?
YouTube is GSFFAM.
GSFFAM.
Yes.
So go check that out. Subscribe to it. You will love it. I promise you. So let's come back. Right now, what we're talking about is trying to help promote inclusion in a church, where it's not just what you're doing on a Sunday morning, but where it's being able to be seen everywhere, maybe seen from the pulpit, be able to see other places. Has anyone tried things at their churches yet? Or, some of you, I know you're just trying to get started. So I'm not sure if you're at any of those places. And it's fair if you're not yet. So I'll jump in then. What some of the things I've helped some churches do that I've tried and things like that. First off, trying to get your individuals involved as much as you can in everything. Quincy, I know you've got several of your individuals that serve, and that's fantastic. But one thing that you can do is create, maybe, talk to the staff and see about creating an inclusion Sunday, where your ministry is highlighted on that Sunday, and doing a lot of different things through the service. So what do I mean with that? Well, first off, you'll get a lot of your individuals, if you even have bulletins or just greeters at the doors when people come into the sanctuary, have your people there instead of the regular people. They greeting everybody. Just give that visibility to them and having them say hi. If you have scripture reading, from the pulpit or something, maybe have one of your friends actually do the scripture reading. Try to have them as included as much as possible. If you've got some of the individuals who are really good with singing or music or anything, see if they can be part of the worship team that day. And I know those are some bigger hoops, but maybe they could, work through those things. If you do have special groups that you have, for instance, Adam and his puppets doing a puppet show, or whatever it might be that your group is able to do, that just brings that awareness and shows things with it. And then the important thing is, again, sharing the stories. And I don't think it's any different than what you do when you first try to bring awareness to the church, and it's just sharing stories of the families, how difficult it is for them to leave, to attend a church, I should say. And, again, I would keep hitting those numbers. I think it is good for you, Quincy, to get out of your comfort zone and be stretched and be up in front of everybody with that. Because, one, you're passionate about this, and you need to be the big cheerleader and let everyone see your passion with that. While that can be scary and everything there, if you have your friends with you, and that all of a sudden you can see those nerves disappear when we have our friends with us. Have a couple of the individuals and have them help you with things. It becomes something fun, and then you're not as worried about what's there, but you're just sharing all the cool things that are going on and what's happening. But then you can also be sharing just some of the cold hard facts, that, hey, I'm really proud of this church. We're one of the 11% of churches in the United States that are actually welcoming families with disabilities today. And, I want you to realize, how important that is. We are a beacon of light in our area. Families know that. 90% of families with disabilities aren't attending a church, but they know they can come to our church, and we're able to help them and assist them. And we're making a difference in their lives. And then, maybe have a little video clip and sharing that. But that's one way that you can do something. And there have been some, you can do some Google searches. There have been some churches that have had just full blown out inclusion Sundays where their individuals do the entire service. They even, do part of the message and that. So I'd say it's as little and as much as, you're willing to do, as your individuals are willing to do, and as your pastoral team and is able to do with that. But then, it's great to try to get everyone out in front of the church as much as possible, with the serving. And so, it's not just serving maybe in the kids ministry, but maybe trying to get them out in those other areas. Maybe get some who can be great greeters who could maybe be standing there opening the door and welcoming everybody and saying hi, give everyone a high five or a fist bump. We had I had one individual. He was about 28 in a wheelchair, and he wanted to hand out bulletins and help everyone, just say hi to everyone as they came in to the sanctuary. So I got things arranged where he could do that. It was amazing. We had 75% of the people that went into the sanctuary went in through his door. Even though they sat on the opposite side, they went through his door just because they wanted to say hi to him. They wanted to see his smile. And the other thing that did that brought visibility to our ministry, and that helped everyone see that, hey, he's created the image and likeness of God. He's using his talents. And it was amazing how many people we had come to us and say, you know what? I realized if he's able to serve and God can use him, why should I continue to sit in the pew not doing anything? Like I always refer to, continue to be a knick-knack collecting dust. And so that's how you can help bring awareness and just slowly change that DNA of your church for some more inclusion with that. Any other thoughts that anyone might have, or things that you might have seen or tried?
That's all good. Do you think there's a way, some feedback I got from a family was just like, people are uncomfortable. Is there a systematic way or a good way to go about making people more comfortable? I mean, it is training. Okay, so I'm specifically talking about our Wednesday night student programming.
Mhm.
And students are a hard, I know there's some youth leaders on here. Students are a hard group because they aren't adults. They aren't
Absolutely.
that mature yet, but they aren't as loving and as accepting as our kindergartners.
Right.
And so that inclusion piece at the middle school, high school level has really been tricky, where I feel like our students are there and they are in the worship service and they're in a group and they are there, but there's no meaningful friendships or relationships forming outside of kind of what's been forced. So I don't know if you have any advice or experience with more training, equipping of leaders, equipping of student leaders, anything like that.
Yeah. So, and that's a great question and point there, Quincy. So my experience with that is, one thing that's been real important is to try to train all the student volunteers on just how to welcome someone with disability. Just do any like the regular volunteer training you do for your buddies. And that, I think it's vital for everyone in children's ministry, everyone in student ministry to do that, because it helps them learn how to relate and how to welcome somebody. The important thing I always say is, you only have to be a friend. That's the only experience you have to have. But there's a lot of fear there. And you're right, there's not as much cuddly and love as a student, for any student. Students as a whole, those who are in student ministry are always a whole special breed in and of themselves, with that. They're wonderful. But some of the things with that is just helping slowly work on the awareness piece with that. And I don't remember, Quincy, help jog my memory. How do you guys do your students? Do you have your individuals with disabilities in their own group? Are they integrated into the other groups? How do you do that with them?
Okay, so our current model on Wednesday nights is everyone has a one-on-one buddy, which is different from our Sunday morning services. We don't do buddies. So this was what I felt like was like real inclusion, total inclusion, because they just had their one-on-one buddy and they did all aspects of what everyone else is expected to do: the worship service, the sermon, and then their small group time, totally included. However, we found that when there was an adult with them at all times, other students were less likely to approach them and build relationships with them. And so we are actually strongly considering or moving towards going away from the one-on-one buddies and doing more training and equipping of our student leaders, like the students that have said that they want to lead on Wednesday nights, to be more inclusive and just looking for people that are on the outs, disability or not, and just building bridges that way more organically. And then so we would do our own small group with the content more at their level but
Right.
I don't feel great about that either. So that's kind of what I've been wrestling with lately.
Yep. So let's talk about student ministry real quick. And I think that's where some of these issues are arising. You cannot treat student ministry, individuals with disabilities and student ministries the same way you did children's ministry, whether, no matter how you did it. And I'm a huge fan for inclusion on all aspects, but it usually fails miserably in student ministry. And the reason is in student ministry is where all of a sudden you get a huge intellectual gap with everyone. And I was even a buddy sometimes for some of our individuals. The problem is the lessons when they're in a group, and most of the time it's, 6th grade boys, 11th grade girls, so on and so forth. Well, if you have them with a one-on-one buddy to be helping them in there, the discussion is above their head and they're bored. And when our friends get bored, they check out. And when they check out, they start getting in trouble. They start, doing things they shouldn't. They start becoming disruptive. And especially if you're like in a junior high level and have a group of boys, you lose the entire group of boys and that whole class loses. So there then the rest of the leaders get frustrated, and there tends to be some resentment that gets built up towards our individuals. And so what I like is a mixed inclusion where you have them all together if you do like games ahead of time, like a lot of student groups will kind of like have games, they may have worship. And then when you break for groups, you develop a separate extra group. You have 6th grade boys, 6th grade girls, 11th grade, so on and so forth. But then you have one special group that's going to be your special needs. That's all ages and both sexes. And like you said, Quincy, then you have the curriculum at a level that they can understand. And you'll see in that, all of a sudden, they are more welcomed into things. When you end up having like the game time ahead of time and where they have groups compete against one another, you also have your group with disabilities competing in there. And that's where they really become huge fans for everybody else, especially if you ever do like a dance competition or lip sync or anything like that. It's usually going to be your individuals with special needs who end up winning that, because they love dancing and love doing all that. And everyone gets behind them and cheers. And that really has opened up a lot of great friendships with a lot of churches and ministries I've seen. And so that works well. You still have buddies in there. You don't necessarily, not everyone doesn't necessarily need to have one-on-one. It varies with what you have in there, but that does help with the way you have that room set up. And that just helps with that whole relationship with the leaders and helping that inclusion piece. But the problem with the students especially is that intellectual gap widens so quickly that they're just going to completely check out. And it doesn't matter how good your volunteers are. I even stepped in to try to help, and I quickly realized, oh, this isn't working. And once we went to this other model, it was night and day. All of a sudden, our kids started learning. We didn't have the behaviors, and we saw relationships forming with the other individuals in student ministries. Now you might have some.
The biggest school is I just want them to have relationships, and it's hard to think like, oh, well, when will those happen if they're not in group with them? But I think you just have to trust.
You do, and will, a lot of them they'll be at school with them still and have some of that, but they're also going to be creating relationships with one another there too, and that. But it does come, but they're more apt to be creating relationships with the others than when they're always the one that's causing the behaviors in their group time and the distraction. No one, students don't usually want to be socializing with them. And one that a lot of them don't want to get in trouble for doing that. So they're just not hanging out or trying to partner with them. But if they're able to partner with them and have fun with them and at the game time and worship and have them integrated there, that's where they can make those relationships and see things happening. Does that make some sense?
Yes, that helps a lot. And that's kind of the direction we're headed. It's just a scary step, I guess.
Yeah.
But I think
But
I really do feel like it'll be best for everyone all around.
you'll see a lot of big improvement, a lot of change with that. But I still think it's important to train all the staff in there so that they can learn how to welcome them, and the volunteers can then help promote some of those relationships as well. That's got to be
And for
modeled.
some of the
and we
new
need to
people
teach them.
here, we're looking at training the very first touch that they have at church, whether that's your guest services or whatever. Like, not all families, not all individuals will disclose disability. So we're working on some better training models so that they can kind of identify, even if they're wrong. I would rather them come get me and me get to meet them and just be another welcoming face at church, you know. But just so that people know where to go if they suspect something or they think that this individual might need more help on a Sunday or on a Wednesday night. So more training on the front lines as well.
Yeah. All right. Any other thoughts or questions with either inclusion on a whole or working with students?
I had something. I
sure,
I
Jen.
am a student. I'm 18, so I just left the student ministry and started college and all that. But something that made we're a church plant, so we came from a really big church. So back at the old church that we were at, our student ministry, we had a similar struggle with, incorporating our friends with disabilities. And so something that really helped in our ministry, especially, was the reason I started working in disabilities ministry is I went to Hope Heals Camp as a mission trip. But even if you don't do a full mission trip, offering places for students to serve with members with disabilities opens a new door, because first of all, you can train them, you can teach them about specific disabilities so they're more comfortable with it, and it also gives them that experience. So even if you just have a few students that are working, whether as a buddy on Sunday or even as a buddy some Wednesday nights, it doesn't have to be all the time, so they can still have their group time, but maybe once a month or something like that. Then there's somebody who is a peer to all of the students who is comfortable with that, and really opens doors for students who might be less comfortable with that. And then those some more people might be interested in becoming buddies, and it kind of grows and grows that way. That's something that really happened at our church once we started doing missions trips and that kind of thing. And then now that we've started a buddy program at the church plant, we have a lot of teenagers that work there, and it really helps with just overall inclusion.
Yeah, and that's a great point. The one thing we need to all remember is that students are a perfect volunteer, perfect place to make sure we're recruiting from to volunteer for us, especially if it's in the kids ministry and that. And then if any of them that you have volunteering in them, it's absolutely okay to sit there and say, hey, can you help us, help create some relationships with our friends in student ministry? Because they're already going to have the heart for them. And sometimes they don't even think about it. And just that ask, they're like, oh, absolutely. Yeah. I love, Joe, I love Susie. Yeah. I'll go, and I'll make sure every week I say hi to them and just how they're doing. And, they do that. And then, their friend group usually starts doing that, and that's how it grows. And you can get some really cool relationships that way. So that's a great point, Georgia. Okay. Well, let's jump into the other one. That's a little fun there. That Kaylee brought up, and that's ESL. English is a second language. Has anyone had to deal with that? How about our friends in Tucson? Have you worked with that yet? No? Okay. So it is tough. I'd say it's kind of a combo. That, as well as sign language. Both are two that can be difficult to try to, figure out and work with when you're dealing with an individual with special needs. And then you add that whole nonverbal piece into it, trying to communicate. So there's a couple things that I would say, one would be if you know anyone in your church that is able to, for the Spanish piece, anyone that knows Spanish, they'd be a great one to tap into on that. Depending on where you're located, you may or may not have that. Kayla, you may have that a little bit more just because of where you're located. But still, that doesn't mean anything. Second thing then I would do is tap into like Google Translate, and you can try to use that. And then whenever we're dealing with anyone who's nonverbal, many times we think we can't communicate with them because they're nonverbal. And that's just not true. We absolutely can communicate with them. And many of the times that one of our friends is nonverbal, they completely understand everything. They just can't get the words out or with that. And so they get frustrated. So, we can ask simple questions that would be a yes, no question, or, a couple different things like, would you like to color, or do you want to go eat a snack? And you hold your hand up for each one. And then they point to what they want to do. They just communicate to you what you want to do. So, with, like this little individual with ESL, you can use Google Translate to type, say in the sentence you want, and it'll then say it for you in Spanish and hold up your hand. And then you can say another line. It takes just a little bit more time. It's a little harder. But that's one way you can do it. That's what I've done before when I had an individual who was Spanish only. There was zero English there for him. So we used that, and we were able to get some things and try to figure out. And then he was verbal, so he would say some things back to us. I tried to use Google Translate. He just spoke so fast, it was hard to get it sometimes, but we were able to try to communicate back and forth with that. Same thing with the sign language. There are some apps out there that will do some of the signing. You can, speak into the phone and then it'll put it into sign for you. So those are two things there. That's the low hanging fruit that I would try right now, Kaylee. I don't know if anyone else has any other ideas or anything they may have tried. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh,
Sorry, you can
Go,
go if you'd like. Oh, okay. We don't have any members in because we're a pretty new small church that speak Spanish, but since I live in Tucson, we have a lot of Spanish speaking people. So I have worked with kids before who only speak Spanish, and something that is very easy to do is pictures. So like the same hold up hands and options thing, print out a picture of some of, a toy, or hold up a crayon, or, use things that even if you don't know the name for, they do. And it makes communication a little easier.
Awesome. That's a great point. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love the tip about like holding up your hands with the two options. Do you have any other like just general nonverbal, how we can communicate best with kids that are nonverbal?
One other thing that, and if anyone else has anything, please jump in. One other thing that I think is vital is that we help include the peers in the conversation with our nonverbal friends. Many times the kids who are nonverbal, everyone will start talking to you as the buddy instead of talking to the individual. And so one of the most important things we can do is redirect them so that they can talk to the individual, and then you help answer the questions. And then, you can help encourage them to ask yes, no questions, and even show them how they can do that. And you can tell them, hey, you can ask them, would you like to play with me? Yes or no. And a lot of times they think it's pretty cool to be able to put hands up in that process also works if you've got someone who's nonverbal and they're paralyzed. If you got a quadriplegic, I've had a couple who have been paralyzed neck down. Well, they can't point with their hands. So I do the yes, no, but I'll say blink once for yes, blink twice for no. And they'll do that. And so, that's another way you can do that. But it's really trying to involve the other peers in there, because so many times they're not there. And we want them to be looked as equals, because really they are. And anything we can do to help create any conversation is going to be a good thing. I think what Georgia said, having the pictures, that is a home run. That works well. Visual schedules work really well. So if you're able to put together a visual schedule, and if you don't know what a visual schedule is, it's basically just pictures of what you're going to do in order, so that they can see what's going to be happening. What I love is if you actually take pictures of your actual events instead of using some like comic pictures or anything, or just generic pictures. I would actually go in and, like, if you're going to do worship, I'll take a picture of where you guys do worship, maybe with the kids in there. If you're going to have snack at the table, I'll take a picture of kids at that, so that everyone will know what's going on and how to work through that, and see what that is, and they can just relate to that easier. And so that's another thing that you can do there. Any other thoughts anyone else has?
Kind of to piggyback on the pictures, at my previous job, we would just have like a picture flip book, and it could be personalized to that individual, or it could just be general, but then that way it's something that's always there, and just the laminated pictures. And sometimes that would help to just flip through, and then the eye contact, if they looked at one picture or looked at the other, or things like that. But the flip book was a good resource to keep around, because everything's all together. So just to kind of go off of the picture stuff.
What are some of the pictures that you would put in the book?
So we would have like the bathroom, or we would have even like a yes or no, or if the individual knew sign language, just some basic sign language pictures. And then that way they can kind of tell which one. And then we would have, we were more of like a school type setting, so it was all day, but just hygiene needs, or food, drink, just things like that. Sensory needs, if they needed anything sensory wise. Just pictures like that were familiar, that they could make decisions about.
Yeah, you can have pictures of like some headphones, some sunglasses, so that if things are a little too loud or too bright, that's a way they could actually ask for that then, without, since they can't actually say anything. Or if you got some sensory fidget toys, like Clancy was talking about, you can have some pictures of those, and then you can know to go grab those for it, and then just allow them to use it. But yeah, I love that. That's great. And then you, like she said, having a picture for like, maybe a water fountain or a bathroom, just to make it easier for them to communicate with you that they need to go to the restroom, instead of you going through everything trying to guess what they need. They can show you with that picture book. You can have like the 10 most common things that they might be asking for with it. And you can have a picture maybe too of mom and dad or leave, and then that way you can explain, no, it's not time to leave yet, they'll be coming here in a little bit. But a lot of times that's something they'll be asking for.
Thank you. That's super helpful.
Yeah. All right. Other questions, or want to jump into just kind of how did, I know we got two who are just trying to start pretty much from the get-go, and another one who's kind of got some stuff going and wanting to take it to the next level. How about we just kind of, let's talk a little bit about getting things started. That sound good for you all? Okay. So for me, you know, the thing I always try to tell everyone is just start with what you have. You don't need to, you know, to start a disability ministry or special needs ministry, you don't have to worry about, you know, oh, we've got a plan for 20 or we have to plan for 50 and have this huge ministry. That will come. Start with what you have. You know, there's the old, it's really a myth. It is, but it's not. So let me explain it. The old saying, if you build it, they will come. And a lot of people are afraid, well, if we start a special needs ministry, all the families in our town will start coming because there isn't one around us. Yes and no, they won't. And let me explain that. And think of, if you're a parent, think about being a parent. You're not about to take your child somewhere unless you know that wherever you take your child, they're capable of taking care of your child. And you're not about to drop them off if you don't know they know what they're doing. Well, now add special needs into it. A parent of a child with special needs has high standards. They know their child is difficult. They know they're challenging. And so they want to make sure their child can be taken care of. And no offense to anyone here, I've had it myself. They're not going to take your word for it that you know what you're doing. And just by hanging a shingle that says you have a special needs ministry is not going to be enough for these families. Whose word are they going to take? Another family. They're going to take word of mouth from another family that is already at your church, and they'll say, hey, you know what? I've been going to, let's see, Clinton, you're at St. Timothy, right? Okay. I'm going to St. Timothy, and they're doing a great job taking care of my son or my daughter. And it's been amazing. Why don't you guys come and try it out some weekend? I know they can help take care of your family, and I know it would be awesome. Well, they're going to take their word over it because they know that she's speaking the truth. They're not going to listen to Clancy sitting there saying, hey, come, we'd love to be able to support your family. And I know that's really Clancy's heart, but that family doesn't know that. They're going to take the word of this other family. So it does grow. And I always share my example. I started a disability ministry. I started with 3 people. 8 years later, I had over 800 in my ministry with special needs. So I built it and they came, but it took a long time for all of them to come, but it mainly came in through word of mouth. So let's realize that. So as a result, our first thing is to focus on who you already have. The other thing to realize is you may sit here and say, oh, I don't think we have anyone with special needs in our ministries. You probably do. The parents aren't telling you that their child has special needs because, one, they're afraid you're going to kick them out of your ministry. Because that's what happens at the majority of churches. And so you probably have some kids you're thinking about that you're like, you know, I can see that they might be on the spectrum, or I can see this or that might be happening. You know, it's a little harder to hide like a child with Down syndrome. They're pretty easy to spot, and they also can fit in a little bit easier. It's the autism that makes it a little harder. And so you just start with what you've got. Now, when you're doing ministry, there's 2 different ways you can do ministry when you're trying to start it. And I'll explain both. And you know, here at SOAR, we love coming alongside churches and helping them create disability ministry programs. And we're passionate about that. But the one thing I'm passionate about is every church is different. We don't do a cookie cutter approach. We help each church figure out what is right for them. But the first type is inclusion, a buddy system, where You have the individual with special needs in their age appropriate or developmentally appropriate classroom. That works really well for children's ministry, preschool, children, elementary. And you have like a one-on-one buddy that's with them. The important thing there is that buddy is trained. They're just a guide on the side who fosters independence and helps them be safe, helps them, they focus on their strengths. They don't focus on their disabilities. They focus on their abilities. What do I mean with that? Well, it's craft time. And you've got a child who might have a motor disability. They can't really use scissors too well. And they're sitting there trying to do a craft. Well, instead of them sitting there struggling, trying to cut it out because they can't use scissors, the buddy can step in and quickly cut out the craft for them and give that craft back to the individual. And then they can color it or glue it or whatever it is. Well, that craft is still theirs. They still create it. And the buddy focused on their ability to color, to glue, to do the glitter, everything else. And didn't focus on that disability of not being able to cut it out and have the feedback, the fallout from all the other kids making fun or seeing there. The other thing the buddy does is promote inclusion and welcoming from the other kids in the class. This is really how it works in the school system. Individuals with special needs are in their classrooms, and they learn a lot from their peers, and peers learn a lot from them. This is actually the preferred way for the majority of parents. They really want their kids integrated with everybody else. In my experience, it works for 90 to 95% of individuals. There will be 5 to 10% that just don't function well in a big classroom setting, that may be so severe they need some special help. The other option for a ministry type setting is that you have a segregated standalone classroom where that's just where all the individuals with special needs are. That's what Quincy does with her ministry. They have their children's ministry is segregated, where they've got all their individuals in children's ministry, preschool and children's, all in one room, and they work with them and teach their lesson in there and do all that together. That works for them, and I help them do that, and that's fantastic. It just, again, varies on what everyone wants. The hard thing with that is, depending on where you go and how you do it, you might have all ages in that classroom. I know some churches where they'll have, a 15-year-old in with a 3-year-old. That starts getting a little hard to work through, in just trying to manage all that. But then, like I said, in students, you can use a combination of the two. And by the time you're adults, it does work better to have that segregated where they have their own group, but I love having them in as part of the worship. And then you can pull them out where they can have their own Sunday school class where you have a lesson that's at their level. So let's talk about curriculum real quick. And if anyone has questions, just interrupt me and let me know. But curriculum, that's one of the other big things that people are concerned about. My experience, especially in children's ministry, preschool and children's, you don't really need to worry about the curriculum. All children's ministry curriculum, elementary wise, is usually written at a 2nd or 3rd grade level. And that's usually okay for the overwhelming majority of individuals with special needs. Preschool curriculum's usually written at a 3-year-old level, which again is perfect for our preschoolers. And so you really don't have to worry about finding a special curriculum. Once we get into our students and our adults, that's where we do have to see about editing our curriculum or getting specific curriculum to help them through that and to be able to understand those. So, a lot of times when we have these segregated classrooms, they do get a special curriculum just for them. And that's part of their thought behind it. They think that will help them learn better. And it might, but it's not needed. One of the other really big important things when you are just starting, and one of the first things I tell everyone to do, pray. Pray. And pray that God starts providing the volunteers you need and everything for that. but you need to create a leadership team for this. And you can be on that leadership team. It doesn't mean you have to lead that leadership team, but the leadership team is going to be people who will kind of help form this ministry, who will help determine the way it goes, but they're also going to be your cheerleaders who are going to help, cheer everyone on, who are going to be promoting it. Like Quincy said, she doesn't like getting up in front of people. Well, maybe she can have someone on her leadership team who is that outgoing person who is fine being in the spotlight, who can do that for her. Quincy is specifically their special needs director there, and she's passionate. She does a fantastic job there with that, but she might have someone else on her team who can get up and do that. You don't have to do everything. And that's the important thing I always want to address. We always need to try to build that and recruit to replace ourselves in everything. But you want to have this team that can help plan things out, that can help recruit people for you to serve and volunteer with as well as you go through everything. And that'll be really helpful as well. And just working through all that. And then you also want to be talking to senior leadership. That's going to be another really big one. And you want to make sure they're on board and see where they're at. If senior leadership is on board with you doing a special needs ministry, you're going to have a lot easier time at doing it. I've done a disability ministry at a church where senior leadership was not on board, and was extremely challenging and very slow to grow. I did a ministry at a church where senior leadership was completely on board, and that ministry took off. That was the one that went from 3 to 800. A lot of that was because I had the support from leadership. But even with that, I had to keep fighting for the rights of our individuals and everything, because senior leadership doesn't understand the needs of our families. And so we need to constantly be in front of them and helping them realize how difficult some things are. One example I had, ours, the children's ministry made a proposal that, because we were running out of space, as frequently everyone runs out of space, and they're like, well, how about we just move everyone with special needs to our 8 o'clock service, because that's our biggest place that we have the most opening, and we can just have those families go there. Well, I had to jump in and say, absolutely not. That's not going to work for the families. Like, well, why not? Why can't they come? They have to go to school. Why can't they do it there? And then I explained to them, I go, well, here's exactly why. Mom will get the individual all ready. Then she'll go check on the other kid, get them ready, come back and see Johnny. Johnny's butt naked again. Has to get him all completely ready again. Then she goes back and she'll get herself ready and comes back. Johnny's naked again, and has to and literally you have to redo this 3 or 4 times. And if you don't believe me, ask any parent of a child with special needs. I just did a consult with a church yesterday, and one of the leaders there, she's a mom, and I shared that, and she started cracking up because she goes, you just described my Sunday morning. She goes, I'm the children's director, and I have to be there at 8, and it takes me 2.5 hours to get my kid ready just to be there at church on Sunday morning. And the executive pastor was there too, and going like, what? And so it's just those, don't know. So that's what I'm going with all that is, we have to fight for our families. We have to be the voice for our families and helping them through all that. And so you're going to be a major voice. You're going to be a major cheerleader for everybody in the church. You're also going to help other ministries learn how to welcome your families. We can talk to the worship pastor, the worship leader, whoever that might be, because, frequently it's just out of habit. Most worship leaders, when they go to kick off, worship on Sunday morning, they'll usually say, hey, would you please stand and join us in worshiping? Well, what if you're in a wheelchair and you can't stand? What if you're 75 years old and you just had your hip replaced? You're not going to be able to stand, or you need hip replacement. It's painful to stand. You just discriminate against them. And so, for a while, some of them say, well, if you're able, please join us in standing. Well, I don't even care for that one, because it's still, not the best. You feel like, I'm still kind of second rate for not doing it. So just a simple statement with that I love would be, would you please join us with your heart in worshiping today? And then let everyone decide what they want to do. Well, when you tell everyone to worship with their heart, you open everything. And that includes if you've got Frank, who is a 26-year-old with autism, who absolutely loves worship and loves the drums, and he comes up to the stage and bangs on the stage with the drums. And that's where the worship leader that can then turn to him and go, Frank, I love how you are worshiping God today. Statements like that can all of a sudden change all the people in the church who are sitting there going, I can't believe they're not taking this guy out of there. What on earth is he doing? That's horrible. So all of a sudden going, oh my gosh, that's his way of worshiping. Okay, that's pretty cool. It all of a sudden makes it acceptable. And so we need to help educate every ministry on things with that. So those are some things there. I just kind of threw out a whole bunch of things. But we need to recruit volunteers. We need to train everybody. And, the most important thing that you do if you have buddies is you want to make sure that they're trained. If they're not successful, able to be trained to be successful, you're setting them up for a bad experience. You're setting up the individual with special needs to have a bad experience, because they may have a behavior. The individual who's the buddy may or may not know what to do. They could potentially get bit or hit. They may not have been prepared for that. And then they just don't want to do that anymore. And they forget why they're there. So it's really important that we really get everyone trained to know how to have the strengths to succeed and the skills to succeed through anything on a Sunday. So
Quick question.
yes, please.
So we have you coming in February,
Yep,
but we
excited to
already
come.
have our our buddy system up and running.
Yeah.
And we have some new people that need training now. So we were going to do like a Zoom meeting sometime coming up, but I've been kind of working on what we're going to go over. Is there anything in particular that you think it's like really important to make sure that we bring up with them in the meantime?
Yeah, so some of the important things to hit would be just encourage them how to stay there. How to maybe one of the first and most important things is behavior is always a form of communication. It's always a form of communication. So bad behavior, they're trying to communicate something to you, and we've got to try to figure out what that is. And so the best thing that we can do is be aware of what's going on with the individual we're buddying and that we're working with and learn them so that we can help them be successful. And that might mean that, if we sit there and watch them, start fidgeting their hands, or they start hands on the ears and they start rocking. Well, we don't just sit there and go, okay, they're doing that. Well, that's usually, especially with autism, that's usually some behaviors that are telling us, I'm getting agitated, something's going to happen if I don't get something fixed. And then we have to be a detective and figure out what to do. So my first and most important thing is that we always remain calm. It's vital that the buddy always remains calm. You don't have to always know what to do, but you have to act like you do. So remain calm. Don't, and if you're ever called to go help out something, if someone's having really bad behavior, it's fine if you go running to get to the room, but before you walk into the room, I do three things. I'll stop, take a big breath. I do my text message prayer, God help me. And then I walk into the room, because your behavior affects other behavior. If I come in and I'm calm, I'm going to be able to help calm that situation. But if I come in guns a-blazing, oh, what's going on? What's going on? I'm going to rev everything up. And that's what usually happens with volunteers when we see something going on. The other thing, we have to get down on their level. And I love trying to look them in the eye. They may or may not want to do it, but I get down on their level. I talk calm, and then try to figure out what's going on. Frequently, I'll put my hand on their shoulder. I might massage their shoulder. Now, individual with special needs, either they like touch or they don't like touch. And you'll know immediately. If they don't like touch, you immediately take your hand off. But if they like it, you can kind of massage and do a deep massage, and you'll watch them just relax and really calm down. And that can be really helpful for them. And it just kind of melts it away. The other thing, you give them simple statements, and you can use if-then statements, first-then statements. Hey, first, we're going to go and sit at the table, then we're going to go get snacks or whatever, letting them know what's happening. You can give them a fidget toy if you think that's what they're needing. You can try headphones, maybe try sunglasses if that is needed. Just all these things you can work through. But the important thing for a buddy is they're a guide on the side, and it's absolutely okay that they might be behind them. They don't have to be right there by them all the time. They can be back behind them, allowing independence for them, interacting with their peers, doing what they need, and then just being there as support. They're helping promote interactions with the rest of the class. They're focusing on abilities, not their disabilities. And they're there then to step in when they start seeing some of the behaviors arise that they can stop. One of the other big things that I teach on behavior, and it's one of the things I wish I knew when my kids were young. I didn't figure this out until later. But whenever we have someone doing something we don't want them to do, what do we usually say? And we'll just use hitting, for instance. Stop hitting. Don't hit. And really what is happening, we're reinforcing what we're telling them not to do, because they're just hearing hitting, hitting, hitting. And I can't tell you the number of times I've had a child who's sitting there hitting someone, and I'll see them, don't hit, don't hit, don't hit, as they continue to hit. Let me give you an example. Don't think of an elephant. Stop thinking of an elephant. Don't think of an elephant. What are you thinking of? An elephant. Well, I told you don't think of it. Why did you think of it? It's because it's the last thing I told you. And, we instead, when we have something we want them to stop, we need to tell them something positive to do. So instead of saying stop hitting, we can instead say, hey, let's sit at the table. It's a positive thing. It's completely different, and they'll probably do it. It completely breaks that cycle. A buddy of mine once caddied for a professional golfer, and that golfer told him, and it goes right in line with this, because he was at one of my trainings, and he goes, this golfer told me whenever I gave him the club and he asked me where to hit it, he said, you will never tell me, don't hit it in the water, don't hit it in the rough, don't hit it here or there. Because I go up to approach the ball, all I'm thinking about is water, rough, and I hit it there every time. He said, you will tell me where you want me to hit it, and I will hit it there. And it's that same exact principle. We need to tell the individuals what we want them to do, and that'll be more successful. I've started doing that with my kids. even though I've got teenagers now, and it's amazing how that's much more successful now. I just wish I had it when, they were 2, 3, that could have made that so much better. But those are some of the things I would make sure I'd cover there with that. And the other thing, don't take any of the behavior personal. It's not because of something they're doing or not doing. They can't take it personal, and they just need to do the best that they can. And they need to know when to call for help, and that it's absolutely okay to call for help. Behavior will happen, and they should know they are never alone. There's always someone they can call for help.
Is there like a certain like things that you say, like when X, Y, and Z are happening, this is when you couldn't call for help?
Not really, because it's always different, to be honest
Yeah.
with you, Kaylee. When I say, if they don't feel comfortable, call for help, because every individual's different with it. My most important thing, they're volunteers, and I want the volunteer to be successful. I want them to come back. And so I don't want them to feel like they can't call for help until X, Y, or Z happens. If they're super stressed out and they're not dealing with something, I want them to call for help, because their anxiety is starting to rise. And as their anxiety rises, the participants' anxiety rises, because behavior affects behavior. So if they can call for help, we can come in and just relax everybody. We can prevent that behavior in the long run.
Awesome.
So something that has been kind of on my mind, and I don't know how soon we'd be able to accomplish this, but I think definitely down the road, if we were able to provide like a respite night for our families of special needs, so that they could go on a date or things. So I know that would require a couple of things, but just kind of what would the starting process for that be?
Yeah, that's great. And that's one of my favorite things to do. We did that, and that's really what helped grow our ministry and started that. And we've helped many churches start with respite nights. One of the things I always say, I don't recommend you doing a respite night until you feel confident with what you're doing on a Sunday morning. Because you might do a respite night, knock it out of the park and do everything well. Then all the families will start telling everyone, hey, we had this great respite night. They did this great job. Come to our church. And you're not prepared for anything on Sunday. If things are a mess on Sunday, it's going to really get bad quickly. So I always recommend getting the Sunday morning in order first. And it honestly isn't a hard thing to do. So, if you're just starting, I'd say, give it 3 to 6 months to build things up and get it there. And then you can offer a respite. How often do you do respite? What does respite look like? It's different for everybody. I would start off with no more than 1 a quarter to 1 twice a year, maybe even just try 1, period. And doing a respite, and for those that don't know what a respite is, it's where you take care of the individual with special needs, like a parent's night out, let the parents go. And the one thing I always recommend is that you also do something for the siblings, because the siblings don't have a normal life. And so you do both the individuals and the siblings. And if you're able to try to have them in separate areas and separate things going on, that's the best. For the respite, then you have a one-on-one buddy with the individual with special needs the entire night. Whether they need it or not, you just do it. And I like to run a respite in what I call controlled chaos. I have a bunch of different areas set up that they can go to. We have a music room. We have a dry sensory room, which is like Legos, rice and beans, Play-Doh. We have a wet sensory room, which is, I've got smocks they can put on, and then shaving cream on tables, which is one of the most fun they have. I also have a little water table they can play in with water toys I've got. We've got, we've got, for us, we go from birth to 75 right now. So I've got a teen room. We're in that teen room. I've got some video games. I've got a movie in there that's more appropriate for the teens. And I've got a fingernail painting station for my teen girls to do that in there. I've got, different little rooms. I've got like a minute to win it game room with a bunch of little games that we can do and fun things like that. And then like have a gym open where we can, shoot baskets or have a big parachute open, a bunch of things going on where they can have all kinds of activities. The way I usually start off the night is parents come in, drop them off. I'm a huge fan of introducing every single child, making a big deal, having everyone cheer them because they're so special and the parents absolutely love that. And then the buddy comes up, meets them. And then if you have a meal for them, you can have them go get the food there, eat, and then, or if you just have snacks, that's fine too. And then I usually right up at the very front, I'll have a time of worship where we'll have 2 or 3 songs. I usually don't do like a band or anything. I'll have like maybe one person, maybe doing guitar, acoustic, and doing some songs. I'll always finish with Jesus Loves Me. And then I'll give a 5-minute at most devotional, 3 to 5 minutes. I may have a theme for the night, and the devotional always goes with the theme. And then once I'm done with the devotional, I release everyone and say, you got it, go wherever you need. I do have a medical team for my nights, and my medical team is made up of nurses or paramedics or nursing students, doctors, and they will help with anything that might come up, any injuries that might be there. Usually on respite nights, not dealing with many medications or anything, but they can also then help with bathroom changes, diaper changes, things like that, and giving you that 2-to-1 ratio that you need to help with all that. And so that's been huge and very beneficial. The other thing I really recommend having is creating a behavior team, where you've got, maybe depending on how many people you have, anywhere from 2 to 4 people who are on a behavior team, and they're responding to all the behaviors that are occurring, if there are any, and not leaving it up to all the buddies, because a lot of these buddies may not have gone through your full training you do on a Sunday. And that this can be a lesser type of training to let them in. In fact, what I do for my training, I have an online training that's 5 minutes that they watch. And it's on our website. You can check that out, see what it is. But, it's just basically, I'm encouraging them to be a friend and be a guide on the side. Just have fun with them. And that's really my goal for that night, is that they have someone to partner with them. And then any big behaviors, my team will jump in that knows how to deal with behaviors. And then we just have fun. At the end of the night, we usually come back in a central area where it's easier for the parents to pick up, and they come in, pick up, and it goes great. But I recommend that probably about 6 months after you feel you've got things going well on a Sunday morning. My rule of thumb for the number of volunteers is you need about 2 volunteers for every 1 participant. And it doesn't mean that every participant gets 2 volunteers. That's just the way it kind of balances out. Because what I do, I put a volunteer in like and I also have crafts. So like I'll have a craft room. I may have 2 craft rooms with 2 different crafts, but I'll put a volunteer who is in running those rooms. Why is that so important? Well, if I have a participant and their buddy show up in that room, if a leader is in that room, they automatically have a 2-to-1. They're not left one-on-one. So by having someone in each room, I'm always protecting myself to make sure I always have at least 2-to-1 everywhere they go. So that's why it's important to have at least 1 leader in each room. A lot of times I try to have 2 in case someone needs to go to the bathroom or whatever happens. That usually works well. But because of that, it usually ends up being about a 2-to-1 ratio for volunteers.
That's helpful. Thank you. I'll
Uh-huh.
serve us on Sunday and then you can let us know.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, we do respites for us. If anyone ever wants to come back when we do a respite and see it in person, you're more than welcome to do that as well. So, and actually, Clancy, we're doing one out in your neck of the woods. We'll be in Lee Summit in December to do one out at the B&B movie theater. So not super close, but it's not terribly far. And then November, we're doing one in Gladstone.
Okay, yeah, that'd be helpful. If I could kind of go back to when you were talking about getting the senior leadership.
Yes.
So the pastor and I are trying to kind of update all of the kid ministry as it is. We're starting to lose children, and so we want to revamp everything. So on top of all our goals for a special needs ministry, on top of all of that, do you think it would be beneficial to like we've got like a friendship club, which is a special needs club that comes and they do like a once a month thing at the church.
Mm-hmm.
Would it be beneficial to do like see if we could do one event with them, kind of to get our feet wet a little bit and then start the ball rolling from there?
Yeah, it just depends on what you're trying to do. Most friendship clubs are usually the adults. I'm not sure if that's what yours is, usually older teens and adults. So possible, and that could bring more adults your way. And then the question would be, what do you have on Sunday if they come on Sunday? Do you have a friendship class every Sunday for them in that? I don't know if that necessarily will help translate to something for the kids if you're trying to do something in the kids ministry.
Well, and they see it. I've been there a couple times when they're there and they are teens. I just didn't know if maybe reaching out to them, and if we do, like the pastor had mentioned, we do an Easter egg hunt every year. So if we did an event similar to that with an outsider group, maybe, and if it's successful, then we can present that also to senior leadership to show them like, hey, we've reached out, we've done this, it was successful. Here's our ideas.
The only thing I'd caution with that, if for some reason it doesn't work, you don't want senior leadership to go, oh, we're not doing any of this then. And so that's the only place I'd be careful with that. What I like to do with senior leadership is I go straight to the Bible. I do. And I'll sit there and say, we are a biblical church and we need to do what the Bible's saying. Luke 14 gives us a biblical mandate, not once, but twice in that passage, that the church has to welcome families with special needs. And it's a command, and we are being called to do this. Only 11% of churches in the United States are welcoming families, and that's not acceptable. God's calling us out. And that passage, it says a couple things. It talks about the great wedding banquet, and that wedding banquet represents the church. And Jesus says, go now into the street and bring in the lame, the blind, the deaf, and give them a seat at the table. Again, that table being the church. And then he says, and then give them a seat of honor so that you will be blessed. Well, there's a couple important things in that passage that stands out that many pastors forget a lot of times. One, it's talking about families with special needs, because families with special needs the church just as much as the church needs those with special needs. It's a biblical mandate. But two is the very first two words in that passage. It says, go now. It doesn't say go when you're ready. Do it when you want to, do it when you've got the money, do when you think you can. It says go now, do it right now at this moment. You don't have time to wait. Go now. This is a biblical command to go now. You bring them in, you provide for them, take care of those that you have. And then the important part of that passage that we miss a lot is you will be blessed. Your church will be blessed. And I'm telling you, every church I've ever worked with and helping them start a disability ministry, they have been blessed. My church is a perfect example. I started with 3, grew it to over 800 individuals with disabilities. I went from 10 volunteers to over 2,500 volunteers. Our church exploded. We went from 1,000 people to over 6,000. That is being blessed. That's what God promises. And so that's kind of how I go more to the senior leadership. Senior leadership loves to find excuses on why they can't do something. It costs too much money. We don't have the people. Someone else is already doing it. And I hate giving them a potential of doing something and it may not go well because of something completely out of your control. And then they say, that didn't go well. We tried it. We're done. We're not doing it again. Well, that's not what the Bible tells us to do. And so that's why I'm kind of not as big on that aspect, because I don't think that's going to help open their eyes to everything. Trying to open their eyes more would be maybe having a meal. If you want to do something, create a dinner where you have a couple of the families in your church who have individuals with disabilities, and you invite them to it with their kids, and you invite the senior leadership to that dinner, and they all break bread together. And you tell the families that have the kids with special needs, tell them to pray and that their kids do not have a good night. Pray that they have a typical night, because you want that senior leadership to see just what everyday life is like, how hard it really is. Let them realize that, oh my gosh, mom and dad actually are married in this one, even though the divorce rate's 90%. But we've got this family who mom and dad's married, but mom never comes to church because she has to stay home with Susie because there's no one at the church able to take care of her. I bet senior leadership has no clue there's people like that in the church. But I know it is in every single church there is, because that's what happens all the time. And those are the mouth dropping things. And I always share, every church I know has a children's ministry. Why? Well, one, every senior leadership, they've been a kid. Many of them have kids and they know the importance. They also know if you don't have a children's ministry, you're not going to grow your church. 2, they also all have a care ministry. Just about every church has a care ministry, benevolence, hospital visitation, elderly, things along those lines. Well, why do they have that? All the senior leadership have aging parents, grandparents that they saw these needs that the church had to step in and take care of. So they've had that experience. Why do they not see the need for special needs? They've not physically been touched by that. And the thing we have to be aware of is today, individuals with disabilities and special needs makes up the largest minority in the United States. They make up 26% of the population today, of all ages. And so, they're there, and we just have to realize how to welcome them, how to take care of them. 1 out of every 5 kids has a disability today. 1 out of every 4 adults has a disability. And so I always say, if you've got a church more than 4 adults and 5 kids, you've got people with special needs and disabilities in your church, and we need to see how to welcome them. So that's actually what I would do to recommend.
Okay. That's great advice. Thank you.
Helpful or other thoughts there? And I'm not saying you shouldn't try to do some of those things. Doing a special Easter egg hunt, I think that can be very helpful with it, but it's the same thing that I was kind of referring to back with Tammy. If you're doing that Easter egg hunt, and it goes well, what are you going to do when the next Sunday after Easter you have 5 brand new families show up on Sunday morning, and you're not able to? You don't have any buddies to take care of them. Because you pretty much were announcing to everyone, you got the community come in, you did that successfully. But if you don't have the backup and everything in place on a Sunday morning, you're setting yourself up for failure. And you can actually hurt yourself more, because if those families come in and you're not able to help them, then you've shot yourself in the leg, because those families then are going to use that word of mouth. Well, they had a good event, but they have no clue what they're doing on Sunday. Don't go back there. And that's going to take a long time to recover.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you. That's why I wanted to be here, but that's, an avenue I didn't even take into consideration. So
Yeah.
that's great advice. I
Nope.
appreciate it.
Absolutely. And, it's part of the ability of me having worked with so many churches and seen so many things that have gone well and things that have gone wrong
Yeah.
with it. So my heart is I can always help prevent someone from doing something that doesn't help. So Adam, what's going on with you guys? Are you writing some new skits or doing new ministry? What are you guys doing now?
So we just did actually a sing-along and new skit not too long ago. The sing-along we did was, well, I can find it and tell you which one it was. We did a sing-along about the Bible. And then the skit we did was the lost sheep.
Very cool.
And the premise behind that skit was that it was a time traveling reporter that was going back in time to the lost sheep and telling the story about that.
Cool. And I really do recommend you guys check out what they've done. I've used, it's been a few years now, but one of their, I don't even remember, Adam, which one it was, but one of their puppet things we used it for our general kids because it matched up with the lesson we were doing, and they just ate that up. It was fantastic. We didn't use it just for our individual special needs or our adult class. We used it for everybody, and they really liked it. But your group does a great job with that. So I still want to see if we can get you up for the conference. So I think that'd be
definitely.
amazing. So how many do you have in your group now?
So we have about 12 or 13 people in our group.
Very cool. And what are the ages?
The ages is 16 to 30 is our age limit now, but I mean, we would definitely eventually we would like to expand that.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. All right. What else is going on with you guys, or other thoughts you all have?
You had mentioned a couple times, I think even today, and then like when we did a consult to share the stories of the families that have kids with special needs. And I was wondering if you had any like specific video ideas. Is it always a video? Is it just like, is it us sharing secondhand their story if they don't want to share? Can you give like a couple examples of how you've done that?
Absolutely. So I think the best one is a video. Kind of takes that pressure off of them. Usually, even when people don't like getting in front of people, they're okay with, maybe just sitting in their own living room with you, and you can do it with an iPhone. Phones today are so good. You can just film it with that, and then have your editing department, video department take care of all that. But just ask them some questions and record that and get that there. Just have them share that story. I've done it too, where I've actually had them come up in person. And like, I had just got done sharing, with the church how, only 11% of churches do this. And 90% of families with disabilities don't attend the church. And there's 3 reasons why they don't attend the church. One, they know the church probably isn't prepared to take care of their child. Well, we just shared only 11% even welcome them. 2 is because they know their child is a burden, and so they don't want to be a burden to the church. And 3, and this is the one that always breaks my heart, they've been asked to leave the church too many times, and they don't want to be asked to leave again because they feel God's given up on them. Well, I shared that with the church, and when I shared that last part, there literally was an audible gasp through our congregation, and jaws dropped. And then I brought up one of my moms, and we had a little video of her son. He was 26 years old, and she then shared her story, how they had been kicked out of 6 churches before she came to ours. And she came to our church because she was told I would take them and I would never kick anyone out. And she shared what a blessing that was, and that we were sharing Jesus with her son, and that's really what she wanted. Other people, they would just try to, put them in a room and just babysit them. But, we weren't just, taking care of him. We were sharing Jesus with him, and he was learning that, and she was seeing differences in him. And so hearing stories like that are huge. And then, she was able to share that, she was finally able to go to church and make some relationships as well. She was divorced. She's one of the 90%. And so that's one of the ways to do it. It works a lot better if you can get them sharing the story instead of you sharing the story for them. Just because you're going to be able to, they're going to be able to share their own story a lot better than we can ever share their story with it.
What questions might you ask when you do that video?
Yeah, so there can be a lot of things. You can ask them what it means to them to be able to go to church, and to know that there's someone to take care of their child. You can ask them how hard it is to go to a church. You can ask, have they ever been asked not to leave or not to come to a church, or have they ever been asked to leave a church or felt like they weren't welcomed? And it's okay if they even say, what, we and I'm not saying this is the case for you, Kaylee, but they might say, when we first came to Midway, we didn't feel that welcomed, but we tried again, and Midway has really accepted us for who we are and loves our child and is now doing everything they can to accept them, and that has meant the world to us. And just showing how your church and all of your churches, you're all in this process of changing and improving, and we all admit, every church I've been at went from never accepting the families to accepting. And in fact, the one church I was at where I said senior leadership wasn't supportive, when I went to senior leadership and asked to start a disability ministry, the senior pastor's immediate response to me was, no, I don't want those kind of people here. That was the senior pastor's response. And after an hour plus debate, it remained that way. There are a lot of senior pastors who that will be their response. They don't want those kind of people. And because it brings a lot of difficulty, there's a lot of things. And for him, what it came down to, well, families with special needs, they usually have a lot of therapy, and as a result, and they're usually divorced, there's usually not a lot of money, so they can't tithe. I don't want them. We're going to have to give them more than they could ever give to us. And there's a lot of senior leaders who that is what they're thinking. It's not right, but that is what they think. And so we just kind of need to be aware of all that. But there really isn't any wrong question that you can ask a family. You can ask them kind of what their week is like, what their routine is like, how hard it is to get to church, anything like that to try to figure that out.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Anything else? Hopefully today's been helpful for y'all. We've covered a wide range of things. All right. Well, if no one else has anything, I may give you all an extra 15 minutes back to your life and schedules. I know everyone's busy. But with that, let me again tell you, SOAR is here to help you guys out. We'd love to assist you in any way. Clancy, I'd love to, meet with you sometime, talk with you, help you through things, especially with you here in our backyard, with that. But, we can get together and that, my email is doc at soarspecialneeds.org. And it's SOAR. So it's doc at SOAR specialneeds.org. But email me and I can send you info, send you a link on how to do a consult with us. The consults are completely free. You can ask Kaylee and Tammy. I've done consults with both of them. Hopefully they thought that was helpful for them. Hopefully I'm going to be coming out February to Tucson to work with Loving Branch and help them get going with things, but excited for all of it. My big thing is start with where you guys are at. A lot of people will tell you what you should do, what you shouldn't do. Bottom line, important thing is just do something and do what you feel God calling you to do for your church. That's really the most important thing. I do my best. I try to help y'all. I'm not going to be right 100% of the time. But I'm going to sit here and I'll give you my best effort and help you out. But, life is crazy. These families are amazing. And I firmly believe that every individual with special needs and a disability, God created them on purpose and for a purpose. And we can teach and share the love of Jesus with them. And they can learn that Jesus loves them and died on the cross for them. And we just have to figure out how to best do that for each individual. And it may be different. And the other thing that we have to remember when we're working with our friends, what works for one may not work for another. And so that's where it can get frustrating sometimes in our world, in that things are going great for, Johnny and Susie and Tommy, but all of a sudden Rob is here and it's not working for him. And then we have to kind of recreate things to make it work for him. And so things are constantly changing with it. And that's part of the fun, but it's also part of the challenge of this ministry. But it's important that as you plan, as you build, no one should ever age out of your ministry. If you start with children, which is great, you need to have something for students once they're students. And then once they're out of students and become adults, you need something for them. And sometimes you have to, have all of it because you may have someone in all the ages. Or you may start like you, Clancy, where you already have adult programming going. Well, now let's try to come up from the bottom. And so there's no right or wrong way. We just want to be able to welcome who we've got. So with that, let me pray, and then I'll send you all off unless you guys have any other questions for me. All right. Heavenly Father God, thank you so much for this day. Again, Lord, I thank you for these churches, these leaders, these ministries represented. God, I pray that you will work through each and every one and bless them. And God, I just pray that you will help them in all that they do, give them wisdom and discernment, and those who are just starting and those who are already doing it and just trying to improve it and grow it. Pray that you work through all that and just help them all as they're working with senior leadership, help senior leadership get on board. And God, just most importantly, I pray that we can share your love to these individuals and help them be an important part of these ministries. And these churches can all become truly inclusive churches, that everyone who walks in the doors will be treated the exact same way, will have the same expectations. And people don't actually see the disability. They just see the heart, and see that they are all children of God. And Lord, we just thank you and give you all praise and glory to your name now. In your name we pray. Amen. All right, everyone. Well, you all have a blessed day, and we will not meet in November because the fourth Thursday is Thanksgiving, and we won't meet in December because that is Christmas. So we will then have our next one in January. So be watching the emails, and our website will do that. If you have any questions in the meantime, though, go ahead and holler out to me, and I'm happy to help you with anything. All right. All right.
Awesome.
Have a good day. We'll see you guys.
Thank you.
God bless.
Bye.
Bye-bye.